welcome to another movie. And in this one, I want to play around with something slightly different. I will say, in a sort of proud way, actually, that the previous time I recorded this movie, things got confusing and I had to stop it because I'd sort of painted myself into a corner. I will say, why would I say that proudly? It's because this sort of work with live coding, there should be some experimentation involved. You should really be doing things that you don't expect the results of. And hopefully you find something where you do something simple and you get a result that's far more complicated and interesting than you think, which is good when you're experimenting, which is good when you're enjoying yourself, but not so good for a training video. So I had to restart this little one. Okay, so here we go. So let's start again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have one line of code, which is play 60 to play middle C. Okay, that's what we did in the first video. I'm also going to have sleep 1, and that's also what we did in the first video. I'm going to put forward.times do around it, and we did that in one of the first two videos. Okay, and this is rather boring. I could actually have a little variable saying the note. Let's make it 65 this time, and play the note. I'm sort of revising what I've done in previous videos. And what's going to happen is very rapidly, I'm going to do something new. Okay, and if I play that again, I can go 45 and play a very low note. And so on. This is where I create my variable. I put the number 45 into the variable. Here I play it back. And this is where I repeat that 4 times to get a 4-note melody. Okay, what I'm going to do here is do something slightly different. I'm going to make this 60, 64, and 67, which you may recognize as the 3 notes that make up C major chord. And I'm going to make it not the note, but the notes, because they're plural. What happens if I try and play back this variable, and what I put into it is using what's called array syntax, to put in not one number, but multiple numbers into my variables. I'm going to play back that whole, it's called an array, which is a way of storing not just one number in a variable, but multiple numbers at the same time. And quite interestingly, it plays back a chord. So, how is this useful? I'm first going to speed this up a little bit, so it plays back quicker. My notes will actually overlap a bit, but this is not going to cause a problem. So 16 times I play it and I sleep for only 0.25. Okay, now remember the previous video, which I hope you've seen. We talked about randomization. What I'd like to do perhaps is choose something which is a little bit less random. Let's just ignore the notes for the minute, and I'm going to say playback somewhere between 60 and 73. I want to include 72. So 60 and 73. Let's play back a random note and see what it sounds like. And because it's playing back from all the possible notes of the 12-note chromatic scale, it sounds not very musical. Maybe it sounds musical in some context, but here I want some simple melodies to come out, so we'll see how we'll do that. I could try playing around with use random seed and see if I can find something which sounds good to me. Not so traditionally musical. Okay, so maybe I try this one. Interesting a bit, but not so good. Now, what's happening here is there's effectively a bit of a collaboration between me and the computer. The computer, with its random number generator, is actually deciding exactly what notes to play. I'm telling it to play in a particular musical range, which keeps the notes not too low and not too high, and also I'm playing around with the seed, and in that way, I'm effectively constraining the computer, but giving it some freedom to work within those constraints. That's an important concept in live coding. We constrain the computer, but quite often give it the ability through randomization to actually decide exactly what it's going to play, and what comes out is some sort of a collaboration. So if I wanted to, I could sit around here for weeks or months playing around with different random seeds, trying to find the one that sounds musical. However, there's an easier way of doing this, and this will develop and develop and develop and give us more tools. If I only choose notes from the C major chord, and let's make it a C major 6th chord, okay, and I'm going to put the notes here. This will go back and play our chords again, which doesn't sound very interesting. Okay, we can see over here that it's actually playing, and the note is all of these notes. So if we tell it to play a variable, which has got not one note stored in it, but 4 notes, it will play back all 4 and give us the chord, which is a useful thing in itself, because quite often in music, we do want to play chords. I will point out that we're going to cover much, much better methods of playing chords. Now, there is a thing I can do here. Instead of playing the notes, I can go the notes dot choose. What this does is the notes dot choose won't play back all 4 notes. It will choose one of them at random and only play that one. So, let's see how that works. I'm going to shrink this down a bit because shorter melodies are more easily recognizable. And that sounds fairly musical. Not surprising, because we're choosing from a very restricted range of notes that we have chosen. I'm going to add in 71. And I'm going to start using random seed a little bit to constrain the note choices, or to say exactly where the random number generator starts, and through a bit of trial and error, try and work out something that's musical. I don't like that. I'm going to change that to a 72, which simplifies my note choices. Still don't like it. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is this use random seed followed by a randomized melody always plays back the same melody. If I put a 4 dot times do around all of that, it will then play back the same 8-note melody 4 times over. Which, for traditional Western style music, produces repetition, which we recognize as being quite musical. It can be quite surprising if you experiment to find out exactly how little repetition you need to put into your music, when suddenly it starts sounding much more conventional. We got Beethoven, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, repetition there. Not quite exact repetition, but some sort of repetition. So quite often for computer music, we want to get repetition in there as well, so we get something that's recognizable. If I move the use random seed up here, then this 8-note loop will be repeated in its entirety 4 times to give 32 notes, but because we only reset the random number generator once, it will be a sequence of 32 random notes. And while it still sounds fairly musical because of the constrained note choice, it doesn't have the repetition anymore. The reason being, we only reset the random number generator once, so therefore all of the 8 melodies were selected randomly from among here with no particular repetition. Put the random seed selection down here, and hey presto, we get some repetition. And it starts sounding a bit more musical. That in itself sounds quite simple, but we could have that as an ostinato over and above some sort of other accompaniment, and it could start sounding musical. I'm going to show you something about the random number generator. The reason why this random seed gives us that melody depends on there only being one random number selected here. So we only select a random number once. When we do the choose to choose from among the array, we generate a random number to do that, and then we go around and play the next note with the next random number. If I put some more randomization in, for example, I'm going to put the pan to be between far left and far right. Then, every time through the loop, I'm choosing two random numbers, and therefore the seed and this bit of code will interact differently to give us a different melody. It's now a melody repeating 4 times, but it didn't actually sound too different from the previous one because my note choice is quite simple and my sound is quite simple and my music is quite simple. Let's change to a different seed, see what we get. I need to put more sophistication into my code to get more sophisticated music. But that's okay because we're building up the skills to do that and we'll be able to do it. That's enough for what I wanted to do now. The main thing I wanted to do now was play around with some of the things I've used before to show that if we learn the 4.times loop or the 8.times loop, we can use it again, play around with the random numbers again, which we've used, and introduce the new thing, which is this concept called an array. Arrays will be taken a lot further, but even this very simple use of arrays can in itself be very, very simple. I'm not going to try and do it now because I haven't planned it, I haven't tested it, and I'll probably confuse myself along the way. But it'd be nice, for example, if this was playing a melody and then choosing from the same notes but maybe an octave down, we were playing much longer pedal notes underneath them to actually create a sort of a hint of harmony, etc. And by thinking in that way, we can use these musical tools to start developing music, and also we're thinking as we're doing it exactly what music do we want to create. That's enough for this little training video, and hopefully you'll play around with this and experiment with it and maybe do some of these things I mentioned and some other things as well to show yourself that just using these very simple tools, we can start using Sonic Pi to develop and produce and create in real time interesting music. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next movie.